Well, hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Christina and I currently live and work in the Dominican Republic, specifically in Santiago de los Caballeros. Today, obviously, I have a guest with me, so that's fun. This is Mills, which most people probably already follow her channel that follow me. I feel like they're very related niches.
That's true.
Yeah. Mills helped me a lot when I was moving here. I watched all of her videos, first of all, before my study abroad. And then I contacted her when I was trying to teach here. She was super helpful. And then we became friends, which is awesome. We're very similar in a lot of ways, which is fun. And so today we wanted to talk about a common experience we shared of coming to the Dominican Republic, which is going on a missions trip. So we are going to talk a little bit about our experience with that and kind of how our opinions on them have kind of changed throughout the years, and kind of where we stand now. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, that was great. Hi everyone, my name's Mills and I have a channel as well, just called Mills. Super creative. And I moved to DR in 2017 to teach at a private school in Barbacoa. I chose that town because I had gone there on mission trips, so that's how I knew about it. That's why I liked it. And I had been going there for, I think I was from 14 to 18, so every year in high school, we did a trip there. And then I spent a year in Santiago, met my husband during this time, and then we moved back and did the K1 visa and everything like that. So yeah, so I'm excited because Christina and I have been talking about this for a year,
really long time.
probably, about mission trips and stuff, because we both get a lot of messages from people coming on mission trips, asking questions, or wanting to move to the DR as a missionary. And I think both of our minds have changed from when we first went on trips to now. So I'm excited to see your thoughts, because we haven't had a full talk about it, and then see what you guys all think too. Please comment your opinions, and we can do a live follow-up on my channel, something, but we're interested in what you guys think too.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. And I think with it, a lot of it is more gray than we're comfortable with. People like to look at them very black or white. Yeah. And I did a capstone on this. I told Mose that recently in my graduating year. And basically my conclusion, I'll say at the end, but it's way more gray than anyone would like to think. And I think no one is comfortable with admitting that. So I think it's an interesting topic to just kind of talk through. And if you are going to do it, how to do it well. So yeah, do you want to kind of start talking about your experience with mission trips then, or?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I am from New York, and our church was really big into missions. So I started out with big mission trips in Pennsylvania, and and then we went to Tennessee. That was a bigger one. And then they were doing a trip to DR with an organization there, which is still there and awesome. So I started going there every year, every summer. It was a 2-week trip, I think, or maybe 16 days. It was pretty long.
Wow, that's long.
Yeah, maybe something like that. And then I did another one in the fall and made my mom come.
Aww.
I've done one to Las Terrenas too, which is on the north coast of DR. Yeah, I loved them. I fell in love with the town, the people, just everything. Every single trip I chose the same site, because you should decide where you want to be. You can do sports, construction, education. I always did education, and I always went to the same preschool. So I felt I got to meet the kids there and go back and recognize them, and then eventually sponsored one to pay for his school. But yeah, I loved it. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
I was I love it here. And that's why I decided to move to Barbacoa, because the town was just so beautiful. And I felt I knew it. It was familiar. I didn't really know anywhere else in the country that well. So yeah, that was my experience with mission trips in DR. Just a few weeks at a time. You're going to the site every day to see the kids and hang out with them and help the teachers that are there every day permanently. And then of course there's a site where you're with other churches from around the states, from the country, and kind of connecting and doing fun little outings and stuff like that. So Was yours like that or was it different?
Yeah, so I have a couple experiences. So my church was, I'm from Indiana, and my church was not like a mega church or anything like that. So we didn't have a ton of missions actually. But my first mission trip experience was to Jamaica. So my church partnered with a church in Jamaica. Yeah.
Okay.
And I went there 4 summers in a row, I believe. I think I've been there 4 or 5 times. So that was similar in the sense that it was like a short-term thing. It was 1 week. We ran an eye clinic and we brought like an eye doctor down. And like, I honestly think it was a pretty decent thing that we did. Like we had a lot of, there's a lot of cataracts that were there. So people were getting free sunglasses, free reading glasses, stuff like that. Then I ended up starting to run a dance clinic for the girls there. So I would do that every year. Yeah, it was fun. And then, so I did that one for 4 or 5 years. And then the one that I did here was much more like regulated, I guess. It was through Crew. I don't know if you know that. It's a Christian organization. Also, the light is starting to come in my window. I don't know about this. It's an organization that is through like a bunch of universities in the US. And they have, it's literally like a national thing. And so they have their like regional locations, if that makes sense. I'm not explaining this well. Basically, it was through Crew, and we came here to the DR, to the Dominican, like to Santo Domingo, and we ran like a VBS for a week.
Okay.
But since it wasn't a repeated trip. Like it's not like it was a church that was constantly going, and it was literally just like you signed up if you wanted to go and you went, and most people would go one time, and no one knew each other, and we stayed at a missions house, and we ran a VBS, kind of. And we did it in like one location the entire week. Then we took it to another location for one day. And there was like one construction project. And then at the end of the week, we like got to go to the beach. So it's much more like traditional what you think of when you think of a mission trip. And that's honestly what I have more of an issue with. I'm going to keep moving this till I feel like I'm not being blinded. So that was my experience coming here. I did love the country though, because my dad's from here and I had never been here before. So that was a good exposure for me, I think. And it's what ultimately made me want to study abroad here and then move back. So it like changed the trajectory of my life. But looking back on that versus like my Jamaica experience, I definitely see some problematic situations that were created from that. So
did you just do that one time or was that okay, cool. That's the one that we did in Las Vegas, like very like it's like a VBS. We did it at like a church, and we were staying at a resort literally, and it was like
as you go and serve in like the impoverished neighborhood afterwards.
Obviously, as one does. So it was just us, like it wasn't other churches and stuff. So it was really low key. The one in Harbor Cove was like a whole. It's like a whole thing, a whole camp, a whole like program, a whole schedule. They have cooks and everything. So yeah, I've done ones like that too in the States where it's a little bit more, I guess
it's like commercialized.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess like the ones that I did in Harbor Cove kind of were too, because it's like on Saturday you get to pick from several excursions, and then I mean I guess like that's good too, because you do want to see it, where you are. So I don't know. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. There's always like a which was better, which was worse type view on this. So
yeah, no, for sure. And I never thought anything was really wrong with it at all until like college, maybe.
Okay, so what changed your perspective on that? What started you thinking?
I can't even like pinpoint one thing. It was probably a culmination of like different things I saw online. And I feel like people were getting more aware of how things could maybe be harmful. And some of these kids kind of grew up and then like would go online and post about their experiences with missionary. So first I was like, oh, well, I'm not a missionary because I didn't like move to another country to like be a missionary full time and get support and like all of that stuff. When I did move, it was to teach, like salary, whatever. But then I think it was probably just like research, things I saw, like videos I watched, some documentaries, and then probably just like critical thinking skills, being like, putting it together. And then once I did move there in a different capacity and got to really like form relationships with locals and talk to different people, then I think my perspective changed even more, I would say. Yeah.
No, for sure. Seeing the culture through the lens of like, I'm living here, I'm not here to change everything. for sure gives you a better, like, I don't know, insight into what we're actually trying to do with a lot of mission trips. Not all of them, but like a lot of the traditional ways that we run them, I think. I don't know. I have a similar, I feel like it was similar for me. In college, I actually did a one-term mission trip to Spain as well, which was kind of different because it was partnered with an organization that actually does really good work with like homeless populations and women who are ended up like in the sex trafficking like whole industry and realm and stuff like that. So they work a lot with them. So it was much more like we're just there to support the people who are already doing work that's going to continue regardless if we're here or not. So I think that started it for me because I was like, this is so different than what we did in the Dominican Republic. Like we did not really do anything. And like, to be fair, in Spain, they did not need us, but then a lot of the girls went on to end up being like advocates for the organization that were already there. Or a couple girls ended up wanting to switch some of their like career ideas to work more with, like in line with that type of outreach, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that started it. And then another thing that really bothered me is the classic Instagram post of someone who's gone to a developing or third world country and they're playing with
Barbie or something.
Right. And then they're like playing with all the babies and they post a picture of them with a brown child and they're like, oh my gosh, such an amazing week for the Lord. And I'm like, I guess there is nothing inherently wrong with you thinking that was an amazing week, but like, that's not your kid. That was like the first, like, I don't know, that I just was very uncomfortable with the fact that you're taking some random child and you're posting it on your Instagram and you're like using it as like a clout thing almost. Like I took my vacation and I went and I did this for a week. And like, what did you actually do? Yeah. And so then what really did it was I had an internship in Mexico with a missions organization actually. And I was like a translator essentially. And so I was on the opposite end. I was receiving all the groups. And the things that I heard these people say, I literally refused to translate some of them. So I was like, that's so insensitive, so ignorant. And like, what I really did like with the organization is they did not allow like the posting of kids and they weren't even really you're not supposed to like go up and hug a random kid because they're trying to teach them like, no, that's not normal to just hug a stranger. You would not encourage your child in the US to go hug a stranger. Why are we encouraging a kid in Mexico to go do that? So so it started twisting the way that I was viewing it. And I was like, okay, there's actually organizations who are trying to do this well. So what's wrong with the traditional model? And then that's when I did my capstone. I was an international studies major, so I had to do something international related. And I chose to do that. Yeah, my professor hated it, but all of my like classmates loved it. So he did not like that it was connected to any sort of religion, but I was like, this could also be non-religious. There's people who do this that have no connection to it.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's funny. So. My thesis was on sex trafficking, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Not really, but to what you were saying.
But harsh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, harsh topics.
I think like another thing was when I don't know, thought about it more and like we went to a church we used to go to here in Arizona. They do mission trips to Honduras, I think. And they built a church there and stuff, which is great. But also, like, is it? I don't know. Yep. Maybe. But they do mission trips to build houses for locals. And I think the mission trip for 1 week costs like $1,600. And that's another time when I was like, dang, like that's so much money. Yep. And then of course I, in research as well. And then living in the DR, you think about it and you're like $1,600 to make it DR related. Most people are making $200 a month. Yep. So that could literally last them like over a year. Yep. Math is hard. Sure. You're like, no.
It would last them a long time. Let's just say that. I can't do math either.
I'm so bad at math. But you're thinking like, okay, someone going there for a week, and that's covering like their flight, their food, their excursions, like not too much for the locals. They're not like taking that money and donating to them. So I started to think like, okay, what if instead of you just like getting this cool experience, which is so awesome. And I think like we both said, it kind of changed the trajectory of both of our lives because then we decided to move back as like full-time teachers. Mm-hmm. What if we just like donated all of that money to the local community? Then that's $1,600 times, I don't know, 10 people that were going to go on the trip. That could go so much further, food, education. or, you know, send less people and hire locals to do the project, because literally one of the tracks at the organization in DR, again, there's so many like nuances, and like just a quick copy, like we're not trying to be offensive to anyone, and like we went on mission trips and they're still good too. So don't feel like we're like attacking anyone, we're just talking. Like it's not, like you said, it's not all black and white. One of the tracks is construction.
Yeah.
They have 14-year-olds doing like houses and stuff, where locals are qualified to do that. Like a local construction worker, you wouldn't hire like some high school kid probably to do that. And if you did, you're probably not paying him or paying him barely anything. So I'm just like, why can't we just donate that to someone who knows what they're doing? Give them work, give their family money from their work. Like there's so many different things that are just like, oh, is that the best thing? Like, I don't know.
So yeah, no, along those lines, that's one of the biggest things that I researched when I was doing the capstone. I honestly do not remember entirely how I structured it, but I remember I looked at like the people who are volunteering, the people who are receiving the help, and the organizations. And one of the big things, one of the big arguments is like, you would do so much more if you just sent that money, which is true to an extent, because another thing then is the issue of where is the money going if you just send it down? So if it's like a church that's organizing it and they're not partnered with anybody, you can't, because then you'd just be sending it to a local and hope they distribute it correctly, which like maybe they would, like there's nothing to say that that couldn't happen, but that's a whole lot harder to like monitor. And then the biggest thing that came out of a lot of research, one of my professors actually worked for a Christian organization in Nigeria for like 5 or 8 years with his wife, and they started like a program like from the root up. It was like their baby, they did amazing things. And like one of the good actual organizations, in my opinion, the way that they built it, because he actually had a background in sustainability, I think, or something like that. Anyway, he was saying what he saw, the people who came and actually saw what they're giving money to were like exponentially more likely to continue giving, if that makes sense. So I was researching that with it, which is also true. There's not a lot of research on this, but what there is definitely saying like a kid, for example, who goes when they're younger is much more likely to be impacted by like, oh, I'm not the center of the universe. And there's actually people my age who have far less opportunities than I do, just because I like was born where I was born. And as they're an adult, they're much more likely to have a global mindset and to continue donating, whether it be like locally or internationally.
That makes
sense. So I agree, because I'm like, another thing was like the local builders are able to build houses cheaper than we are. That was another thing that they found. People spend much more when you're you're sending Americans who don't know what they're doing. So like, you can literally save money if you just hire like a local to do it. But then like, which is better to have people send more money. That's why I'm saying it's all gray, because like it could work, but it also could not. But it's so true, because they're always like teenage boys that are building a house. I'm like, you're not qualified to do any of that. So
and they don't speak Spanish. Like none of us spoke Spanish. The other thing, so like I learned through my trips, and then by the time I moved back when I was an adult, like I was pretty good on these trips. Like you think you're forming these great relationships with locals, but like you can't. Like you really
can't even speak the language.
I mean, of course, there's like one-offs. Like of course, like you don't, you're whatever other situations, but generally you can't form like amazing relationships or like really impact. I mean, you see now it is great because you can impact your action, but you know what I mean. If you don't even speak the same language, you can't really like feel like you truly know the culture. I feel like maybe.
Well, it's also such a controlled environment. I don't know how yours was, but ours is very like I couldn't wear pants. Like we had to wear skirts. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very controlled, it's very monitored. You're bussed from one situation to the other. So I'm like, it's like an us versus them mentality. And I'm like, I was like 16 years old, and I'm like some person coming to like change this entire community, which is not true at all. And so I think that in of itself creates like a power dynamic. It's like, how am I building real relationships if you're putting me on a pedestal when like we're literally the same age? Like that was the one cool thing with Jamaica. Since I went so much, I did meet a lot of the local teens. And we actually did like stay in contact. So that was cool. Like, did I change anything in their life? Probably not, but like it was cool. Like we could be like connected, but yeah.
But it's probably like cooler for you. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that with like the kids, right? When I think about it as like that, because they're kids, they're so little. I was at like a preschool. They're having for a whole summer and fall, every 2 weeks, a new group of like 10 people.
Absolutely.
To their site day in and day out. And you're thinking like, oh my gosh, this kid like loves me. We're like bonding. It's so cute. He's going to do the same thing to the person next week. So like you aren't forming like solid relationships with them. And then I feel like that's damaging to them to see all these freaking white people come and go and not speak their language and not really teaching them. We're just there to like facilitate to the teacher and help and play. Yeah. So I always thought that when it comes to kids, like that can be damaging because it's just like all these relationships that are like
they're ripped away.
Yeah.
And like to that as well, that's why I did appreciate the one organization I did intern at was they did try and like monitor that. They tried to buffer, like the only people who are allowed to exchange information with the students were the people who like live there all like permanently for a time. And because they're like, it is not normal for a kid to bond with someone that quickly and then know they're about to leave. Like that's kind of a trauma response. I'm not qualified in any of this language. It's just what I was told, you know what I mean? Like it's not normal, but that's what's happening repeatedly. So you're right, it's more impacting on the person who's going at that time. The one other side to that is I did talk to the guy who, my professor who worked in Nigeria, and he was saying the one benefit he saw was they worked with a lot of orphans. And he said that a lot of them had a ton of just insecurities, like they didn't feel like they had self-worth because they're orphan kids in a harsh culture to be in if you're not with the family, basically. And he was saying the biggest impact was they would have a realization like, oh, if an American all the way from wherever felt the need to come and visit me, like imagine how much more valuable I am to God, or just the fact that I have value in general. So that is one thing I could see, but I also agree with you. It's a perpetual cycle of randoms.
I know.
So are you like even making a lasting impression on them? Yeah.
No, but I still remember like certain kids, and it's interesting. I mean, again, it's like an age thing, but when I lived in DR, I texted Chris one day and I was like, I just saw on a moto, I am 100% sure one of the girls that I worked with 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. Yeah. And she was like a teenager and I knew her when she was like 4 and she just had the same exact face. She would literally never in a million years be like, wait, I know that. Yeah. Ever. So again, age thing, but it's still weird. The only another benefit, I guess, would be then I started paying for one of their schools. So like, because I was paying for his school, which not to make myself sound like great, it was very for us in the States. Even as a teenager, I was working, but I couldn't pay for that. He was able to go to private school. So a lot of these kids like end up not going to school, like not continuing. So that's a positive. And like, would I have done that if I hadn't gone? Probably not. So that's an impact, right? So like you were saying, like once someone goes, they're more likely to give, which is what you want. But how can we make them going as least traumatizing and as most helpful as possible? There's probably a lot more that can be done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure. No,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the people that work at this organization that are full-time missionaries living there, I feel completely different about that because they're like day in, day out, same people, building relationships, educating people, helping people. Like one of them is, they have like a microfinance track.
Oh, cool.
So they literally like, you know, a local woman could come to them and say, I want a small loan. I'm going to open an empanada stand, whatever. And, you know, from some of that, they've grown into full blown like businesses, multiple locations. That's awesome. So cool. And they have an accountant to facilitate that. And then all of them in each respective, like the nurse, like so helpful. Yeah. That I feel differently about, like a long-term situation, because you're actually, I think, forming good relationships. Yeah. But it's these like one-off, week-long, super expensive things that I think are more complicated.
Oh yeah, and I'm not condemning them. Like I still think it can be beneficial for a high schooler who is the center of their own universe to go and realize that that's not true at all. I just think if we changed the mindset going in, because like a group of teenagers is not going to change a country ever. Like in a week, I should say. Who knows what could happen long term, but like you going to this little place for a week is not going to change the place. And that's what we act like. We're acting like we're doing such a big service. I'm like, are you though? Like, I'm not gonna say you're doing all bad, but you're definitely not changing the circumstance. So yeah, exactly. Like a long-term vision, I think, is what's most necessary.
It's such a complicated topic, but from what I've read from like locals, they were like, we would have rather just had the money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not in like my trips or my experience with articles of like kids who grew up in those situations. I think it was like somewhere in Africa, and he was like poster child. Like literally, everyone took pictures with me. Everyone like came and gone, and I didn't know them, and felt like they knew me. But I think the benefit longer term to the community would have been like resources, financial support.
Yep.
Something.
Which is interesting too, because that's another, I did interview a couple of people who were like on the receiving end. One of my good friends here in the DR actually he still lives in a very rural area, that's a hard word. And they had a bunch of missions groups that would come down like as he was growing up. And he actually loved it. Like he thought it was amazing.
Really?
And he learned English from them. And he thinks that, I don't know, his life would look very different if they hadn't been there, basically. But the caveat is there was a family that was living there permanently, and they were the people who received the groups. So it wasn't like it was just, he was only interacting with the missions groups that were coming in. There was still like a permanent, like more like what you're saying with Harlequin. Yeah. Like there's a permanent organization there that was facilitating the people who were coming. It wasn't just like random, because I don't know, I know a church where I'm from that I don't think they're partnered with really any organization. They just go down for a week. Like down here, they come down to the DR, and it's not partnered, but they like build stuff, and that's pretty much it.
That's
so like, that's it.
Does that in
on
the coast. Yeah, it's like not structured.
Yeah,
but I mean, I don't know.
I think my biggest takeaway after researching this is if you are going to do it, you have to come from looking at it from like the recipient, the people who are volunteering in an organization. Like if you are going in, make sure that you realize like I'm probably going to benefit, if not more, at least just as much as these people are. Most likely I'm benefiting more. Like it's going to be an amazing, like we love being like altruistic. Like it makes you feel great.
I know.
So like you're going to feel great afterwards, and you're going to make connections, and you're going to have like the time of your life. But then you also have to be like, okay, is this damaging the people that I'm going to go visit? And that's what's really kind of hard to gauge. So that's why I think it's important to go through an organization that you know is actually having long-term sustainable goals. Because I also don't think any organization's goal should be to stay where they are for forever. Like I think the ultimate goal should be to pull out. Yeah. Because you want, like, we're not trying to be like Big Brother for forever. Like these are a people. These are people who are adults. Like they should be able to be sustainable. So those are like the three things I honestly think are, it's just important to be aware of. Oops, if you're considering the trip.
I completely agree. Look at us.
Cool, awesome. Do you have any other thoughts on any of this?
I mean, like, I could talk about this for so long because there's so many like exceptions and cool stories you hear that come off from someone like starting out like this, and like we would have never, like we said, we would have never moved to the bar, we would have never like met certain people and done certain things, and I think we did have more of an impact teaching long term and like being there long term, forming like actual real relationships with people on more of like an equal level, like we're both living there, like
exactly.
You know, and like investing that time more than just like a whirlwind experience. But yeah, I just don't want anyone to think that we're like, oh, those trips are bad. I feel like we did a good job of explaining that. But short-term ones, I think are like give me more pause where I'm like, what you said, like, are we helping? Yeah. Or are we going to benefit more? And then when kids are involved, like you have to be even more careful because they're a lot of times.
That's what really grates my nerves is the Instagram posts.
It's like, I don't know. But I could talk about this so long. I hope people comment their own opinions or any questions like about our experiences. I'd be happy to like go deeper into like day to day of like what we did on our mission trips, or kind of the structure and stuff like that, or respond to any opinions.
Or even like if you're looking to do one, there's a really good book called A Path Appeared, and it's to people they also majored in sustainability, so they're very into like researching NGOs and how like their long-term effects play out for like years and years and years. So they have a lot of really good organizations that are actually doing good work that they like say they're doing. So if anyone's actually interested as well. Yeah, it's a really good book. I highly recommend. It was very interesting. But
you should link it in your
I'll have to link it for sure.
Description. See, I'm not a YouTuber. But we can totally do like a live on my channel. Following up, if you guys are interested. I don't know if you're gonna put my channel link. You don't have to, but
for sure.
We
can definitely talk about it more.
Hopefully people reply. I want to like have further conversations.
I know.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we like all the main points.
For sure. Basically, takeaway is they're not all good and they're not all bad. So if you're gonna do it, it's fine. Just think of a way to do it in the least damaging way. That's pretty much it. All right, cool. Well, if we get comments or regardless, we can do another video on this on Mill's channel. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. That was fun.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.